Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. You are welcome to today's live.
Chat.
You are welcome to today's live stream, and we've got a very special guest with us today. It's an honor to have you here, and today we're going to have a conversation um, about atheism, religion, and everything else. There's no there's no um there's no limits to this conversation. And if you have questions for Andy, please feel free to post your questions in the chat, but make sure you tag me so I know that you've asked the question. So welcome, Andy.
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Okay, so hello everyone in chat. We've got Robert X, we've got Mark Caesar, we've got Inquisitor Bacon, not published yet, Mark. We've got Robert, we've got Danisha Freeman. Hey, hello everyone. Now, let me get the YouTube thing out of the way. Anyone who's not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe. Hit that thumbs up, and let us get this. Let us get atheism out there. Let us get the word out there. Let us push this message out into the universe. Okay, so Andy, you are welcome. On this channel, my channel, this channel came as a result of leaving Christianity and identifying as an atheist and just going through the process of deconverting and taking on this new identity. And I came across your group, which has been a very, very, I love every moment of having conversations with you guys. So, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, basically, I mean, we've known each other for a little while now, and it did come about by just trying to get in touch with people who are sort of interested in the sort of things that we're doing. Came across your channel. I got in touch with you, reached out, and sort of said hi. And we've had some pretty deep conversations over the time we've got to know each other. And it was through that really that we've asked you now to come onto our podcast, the Atheism UK podcast, and you become a sort of a regular with us now.
Part of the furniture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a bit of a permanent fixture and fitting. But it's been fantastic because a lot of us within Atheism UK are sort of long-term atheists, and I've been a sort of atheist since I was probably 12. I'm 62 now, believe it or not. 62.
You don't look 62, Andy.
Where did the time go?
You look 62.
I feel it sometimes. But I've been an atheist a long time, and it was quite a strange process of actually becoming more active as an atheist, and because I didn't really start talking about this or doing anything about it since from when I was, I guess, about in my 50s, beginning my 50s, maybe 10 years ago. And I started going to sort of philosophy evenings, and because I've got an interest in philosophy, and I that's where I first came across apologists, and it was incredibly interesting because I've never really been a theist. I've never really believed in God, but it didn't really sort of make much of a difference to me. I wasn't really an out-and-out atheist, and fighting the good fight and all that sort of thing. It didn't bother me. If people believed in God, absolutely fine. You crack on. But for me, it was I was never convinced that a God existed, And it was, I guess it was around about sort of 12, 13 that I started questioning the concept of God. And I started talking to my vicar. It didn't come up with very good answers. And I think he was a little pissed off with me, to be honest, because he couldn't answer my questions, or not to my satisfaction, because it didn't make any sense to me. That when we look at atheism, there's a couple of things that we sort of look at. The very first thing is, does a God exist? The other thing is religion a reliable path to truth? And there's two different things here. Religion and God are completely different things. Religion is an organized process of faith, and so there's different types of religions, and we have to cope with every single different type of religion, and whether it's a path to truth. And if I thought it was for a second, I'd be following that path if I thought it was a path to truth. But it doesn't feel right to me. So there's two things: does God exist, and the religion that supports a belief in God. So the biggest thing for me when I first started was just this concept, this philosophical concept of, why would a God exist? What makes people think that? And I looked around at all the adults around me when I was young, and my mum was a believer. She was the one that really took me to church. My dad, I realised when I was around about the sort of 12 to 14 years old, that he wasn't a believer. He wasn't convinced himself. And he almost apologized to me. We were sitting down one day. He bought me a book on the planets or the solar system. And I asked a question. Again, this is when I was around about 12. I sort of asked a question. Did God make the planets as well? And he sort of looked at me like, wide-eyed, and sort of, oh my God, I don't know how to answer this one. And he would go, oh, probably. And it wasn't until the end of the conversation, when you sort of turn the last page of the book over, and that was really, really good. And he goes, don't tell your mum about, what we was talking about, because I don't really believe in all that stuff, but don't let your mum know. And my dad used to go to church as well. It's a cultural thing, I was a Boy Scout when I was little, so
wait.
we'd go and
hang on, Andy, hang on. You were a Boy Scout. What has the Boy Scout got to do with being religious or not?
Oh, it's just one of the things that the Scout movement used to do. They used to go to church on a Sunday. The whole troop would go to church on a Sunday. We carry flags down the middle of the aisle and all that sort of thing. And I didn't really question that at all. It was just cultural. It's just what we did. But as I say, when I got to a certain age and I started thinking about this, and I just become, I think, like a bit of a pain in the neck to my vicar. And he decided just literally not to talk to me. He just said, I can't help you. And so he didn't really talk to me after that. And it wasn't until I was about 15 I decided to read the Bible. And that was when I just went, I want nothing to do with this. It's really quite strange. It was quite, I don't know. It was a big psychological jerk when I actually read the Bible, because I'd been preached to, like everybody else. You get preached to from the pulpit, and it all sounded okay. It was all sort of quite nice and fluffy and that sort of thing. But when you actually read the Bible, it just suddenly strikes you that this is a really quite horrible, especially the Old Testament. It's really quite horrible. And the God that's portrayed in the Bible is not the sort of God that I'd want to follow. And just the stories of the Bible were just, I read Job and I just went, when God and the devil have a bet and put this poor man through misery, just for a bet. And I'm just thinking, I've been told, by atheists that isn't really the point of the story. Guys, well, no, it is. Read it. It's the point of the story.
Exactly.
Can you break this person? Would he still worship you if you took all these things away, all this good stuff that you've given him? A wife and a farm and food and wealth and things like that, would he still worship you? And that's pretty bloody awful. And there's lots of things, the genocide and it sanctions slavery. And it's just mind blowing how bad it actually is. And I could never understand why people follow it as it's not just the Bible. The Quran's the same. It's pretty bloody awful. And we know we've had ex-Muslims on AUK podcast, and when you talk to them about the Quran, and again, they've read it. It's the path to atheism is actually reading the holy books. If you read the holy books, you suddenly just realise that this is just not quite right. I mean, and it's quite obviously man-made, and I'm talking about not made by humans, but man-made. And it doesn't really answer any of the questions, the big questions of life, where do we come from? Why are we here? Or, what happens when we die? It doesn't really answer any of those questions. Or it tries to, but it doesn't do a good enough job. Because it's just like, just says, oh, God did it. And I've never really bought that,
The God of the gaps.
Yeah, it's if you can't explain something, then you can slip God into it, which I think is like intellectually lazy anyway. And God of the gaps is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The more we understand through science, that gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And even though science doesn't have all the answers, and probably never will. I mean, I don't think we'll ever really truly understand what happened before the Big Bang. We may do, but we may not. That might be the limit of our knowledge. But to just say, okay, well, if you don't know what's before or prior, if you can actually use temporal phrases like time, the concept of time prior to the Big Bang. If we might not ever understand the reason why the Big Bang or the expansion of the universe, that sudden expansion of the universe happened, there's no reason to just put God in there. It makes no sense. That's really where I sort of come from. It's like when I thought about this, what's the most plausible explanation for something like a universe, for instance? 13.8 billion years ago, when they think the temporal universe actually started. What's the reason why you think it might be a god? It seems more plausible that it's a natural thing. And so, that's the where do we come from? Why are we here? It seems that we have to have some sort of reason why we're here, that we're special in some way. But more plausibly, we are animals. We know that 13.8 billion years ago the Big Bang happened. We know that 4.5 billion years ago the Earth was formed. We know about evolution. We know about natural selection. We know through DNA that we're related, or we're part of the great ape family. We know these things. We're just a little bit more intelligent. Our brain capacity is bigger, but we are definitely part of an evoluted system. We're part of this planet. So I can never understand these things. So why are we here? Philosophically, why are we here? I don't think there's any reason why we're actually here. I think we're here. It doesn't mean that our lives don't have purpose, but I don't think the purpose for our lives has anything to do with a god. And then what happens when we die? The same thing happens to us as when we didn't exist before we were born. We're animals, and I think we've really got to start looking at our world in a realistic way. So instead of waiting to die, which is what basically religion is all about, it's like waiting for the rapture, waiting for the end of the world. People don't. If you don't read the Bible and you just get it preached to you, then what tends to happen is that you don't understand that it's a blood cult. You don't understand that it is it's apocalyptic. And Jesus was an apocalyptic preacher that was preaching end of times.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like, Christians and Muslims are just looking for when this
It's going
all
to end.
going to come to an end. It's
Mm,
actually looking for the end of days. It's insanity for me. It's a complete insanity.
it
So
is.
it's you got to read the Bible if it's actually a way of becoming an atheist. It's probably the most potent way of becoming an atheist is just read the bloody Bible. It's pretty awful.
Or read the Quran.
Or read the
Well,
Quran,
if you
which is
if
exactly
you can read Arabic.
yeah, which is exactly what a lot of ex-Muslims have done. They've actually read the Quran and just gone, it's not for me. It's just not for me.
Absolutely. So can you tell us about Atheism UK and how what your role is in Atheism UK, and what are the campaigns and what sort of things are you doing? Or maybe tell us about the status of atheism in the UK.
Well, I think atheism in the UK is easy
Mm,
compared with other countries. I think we've got a very easy ride. It doesn't mean it's all easy, but uh, religion in the UK is massively on decline. In our last podcast, which he was involved in, we looked at the sort of census, and we looked at some of the figures of British attitudes, and I think that we had a graph that had from the sort of 80s to probably I think it was 2018, something like that,
Let me see if
and
I can
it showed
find
that
that. Let me see if I can find this graph and maybe show people. You just carry on
yeah,
talking
if
while I
you can have a
find
look
it.
at that, but basically it basically showed Christianity just falling and falling and falling and falling, and non-belief rising and rising, and I think it's probably around about mid 90s that it actually crossed, uh, and it just shows that religion in the UK is on the wane, heavily on the wane, and non-belief is on the rise and has taken over. There's more people who don't believe than do. So consequently, some of the things that are pretty much legacy in the UK, such as the bishops in the House of Lords,
Hmm.
these are the sort of things that we would consider a campaign, is to try and get rid of the bishops in the House of Lords. It's been there for centuries, and today is just not a necessary part of it. I mean, and the reason why is quite simply because the decisions that they make are based on their religious principles, their religious morality, and the religious morality is not what it's always cracked up to be. It's not exactly moral most of the time. It's based on religious teachings, and so they'll have some sort of say in the House of Lords based on religion rather than based on common sense or what they're actually feeling in their heart, and that can't be right. That can't be right for us in a 21st century UK. It's also it's pretty male led again. you know so it's out of date, outmoded, a bit like the House of Lords in general, I guess. But I think when you've got bishops in the House of Lords, that it's just legacy from our the way history has sort of led it to that point. We don't need it anymore. It shouldn't be there. So that'd be one of the sort of
Mm.
campaigns. We also don't want religion taught in schools. We don't want kids being indoctrinated with religion early. If I got see, the thing is, I think also we've got to sort of state quite categorically that if you do believe in God, that's absolutely fine. Knock yourself out. I don't care. It's not my place to tell you whether you should believe in God or not.
Cannot believe, yeah.
But when theists tell me how to live, that's when I've got a problem. When
Yes.
they put their oar into education of the kids of today, that's when I've got a problem. So these are the sort of things that we do stand for and we do fight for. But as I say, I think in the UK we're very, very, very lucky. If you go to the USA, it's a lot worse.
Oh yes.
A lot more evangelical, and it's almost so ingrained in just the social fabric in the USA that it is massively problematic. And when you get people who are evangelical preachers who are basically just ripping cash out the poor, I think that's just evil. It's just evil.
It is. I mean, it was evident on is it the in January 6th, was it January 6th? The
Yeah,
last year when all of that riot took place. It just you could see how religion has so infiltrated the political system,
yeah.
and they talk about separation of church and state. I just
It does.
where
It
do
sort
you
of blows your mind when you see the sort of thing that the evangelical preachers all preaching Trump's message, and they're all prophets. They're all prophesying all these different things. That Trump will get back in and all that sort of thing. And it is just political, and it's pretty sick. Because there's lots of people who will just follow blindly behind it all, and culminating on the storming of the Capitol building, which is
yeah, like Denisha says, January 6th, one of our proudest moments.
in what way?
No, she's only just she thinks she's being
Oh, good.
facetious.
Okay,
She's
that's
been one of the proudest moments. I mean,
yeah.
so would you say that the UK? I've heard this said that the UK is a Christian country, is a Christian nation. What do you say to that?
Well, statistically, it's not anymore. It used to be,
It used to be.
but I don't think that's relevant anymore. And this is the consequence of actually putting things like the bishops out of the House of Lords. It's not a Christian country. It's not a religious country. And I think if you look at a lot of sort of Northern European countries, you'll see that there's a lot of countries that are not religion based. They're not religious. They're very, very secular, and they just happen to be the ones who've got less crime, less murder, less rape than other countries.
The happier countries.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the countries that are just more looking after the citizens of that country, and giving them genuine freedom. I mean, this is the whole point of it. Again, I used to work with Atheist Alliance International as well, which is an international atheist organisation. And I could only really do that for, I think I was in there for like 18 months. And I could only really do that for that 18 months. So it really depressed me what was happening in the world. We was getting people contacting us with stories of that were horrible. I mean, they were horror stories. Young Muslim girls getting beaten and killed just purely because they decided they didn't want to follow Islam anymore. Kids in Africa, Northern Africa, being held in prison and beaten for blasphemy. We've had a few campaigns where we actually put money in to find legal representation for some of those kids. There was one kid who just put some sort of text about Muhammad, and the police arrested him and put him in prison. He was in prison for months and months and months and months.
Was this the one in Nigeria?
Yeah. There was a few. There's a few in Nigeria.
Oh yeah, there's a few.
It's the whole of that Northern African
Oh
section,
yeah.
which is sort of more
Mm-hmm.
Muslim, and then sort of as you go further south, it gets more Christian. And the Christians are just as bad. I mean, they're just corrupt. It just you just see all these things. That's why I say that the UK's it's quite simple and very easy to
Yes.
be an atheist in the UK. No one cares, Whereas if you're in Middle East, Africa, people do care. You've got to be really careful what you say and what you do. And so there has to be support for those countries as well, and support for the atheists, specifically for the atheists in those countries, and for people in the gay community. I mean, it's
Oh
some of
yes.
the horror stories of we've actually helped Christians, but because they're gay, they are in real serious danger. So these things can't be brushed under the carpet. And
Mm-mm.
there is no justification. There is no religious justification for beating people or even putting them in prison, or and in some examples, people have been killed because of their religious
Absolutely. It's
beliefs.
terrible.
It's pretty awful.
Talking about the LGBTQ, because you brought it up, what's that like in the UK? Can someone identify as being LGBTQ plus? Will anything happen to them in the UK? And are they allowed to same-sex marriage in the UK? Where are we at now with same-sex marriage? Is
Well, it's getting
is
there. I
is
mean,
that
I'm no expert on the LGBT community, but my attitude has always been that you have to have freedom of expression and freedom of thought, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Uh, that sort of goes alongside the concept of don't hurt others. Whatever you do, you can think whatever you want to think, just don't hurt other people. And so, the concept of gay marriage, it shouldn't even be a question nowadays. It shouldn't even be a
Hmm.
thought. If two people love each other and they want to get married, get married. That's I can't see any reason why you shouldn't want love in the world.
Same
It's
here.
really
Same
the whole
here.
point of it, isn't it? Um, but even in this country, I mean, I remember sort of you see a lot of stuff of in the sort of right into the 70s. It's illegal to be homosexual.
Hmm.
Now it isn't. Now there's the completely different attitude to a lot of things. I think it's like with everything. There's a long way to go with a lot of stuff. Attitudes just a lot of attitudes are generational. They take a generation to filter out. But that's why you've got to sort of stand up and say something right from the beginning. It's really down to all of us to stand up for what we believe is right. And
Hmm.
I know that the church has made a sort of an attempt to open the doors for the LGBTQ community, but it's not really where they if you actually dig under the surface, they don't really want gay people in the church, because
No.
according to the Bible, it's an abomination. And the more religious you are, the more you will buck that trend. I mean, it's really only sort of the Church of England sort of got into that because the Church of England is a pretty weak church, and so they'll open the doors, but begrudgingly, and there's you'll find that people will argue that people from the church will argue that it's an open door policy nowadays. But you've only got I mean, I've talked to theists within the Church of England, and they go, no, it's absolutely fine, we've got no problem with it whatsoever. But you carry on talking to them and they'll start showing the true colours after a while. I think it's just we just need to stop it. We just need to get rid of all of that crap, you know.
We do, and I've lost my train of thought. I was going to ask you something. Oh, but never mind. When I get to it, I'll ask. So right
It all
now,
comes back to you.
it will. We're just happy. This is just a conversation. So Atheism UK, is it an official group? Can people join?
Oh, sure, yeah.
What is the plan with Atheism UK?
Yeah, I mean, basically, what we're attempting to do is it's good to have an outlet, I guess, for people who are just want some questions are answered. You know, I mean, we talk to theists, we talk to people who are, sort of questioning coming out of the church. And we're quite happy to have conversations with them. We like to try and keep them as light as possible and as civil as possible. We on the podcasts we often talk about some of the sort of arguments for God and the philosophical stuff, you know, because let's face it, God only really exists in philosophy. If you actually think about it, God doesn't actually exist in the real world. There's no way of actually measuring God. So if God's, you know, outside of time and space and all the rest of it, basically that means it doesn't exist. So the only way you can actually bring God into existence is through theistic argument. So you've got the things like the argument from design or the cosmological argument and things like that. And we talk about those things because these are arguments for God, but they're philosophical arguments for God. And it's just I think it's an interesting subject and something that we talk about in the background all the time anyway. We're always talking about different concepts in philosophy, but you know, whenever we have a conversation with theists, they'll always come up. They've got their favourite argument.
Oh yes.
So you know the intelligent design argument,
Oh
the
goodness.
theological argument.
Mm.
You know, look at the trees. You know, look how fine-tuned everything is. It's
Darth
specifically for
Dawkins.
us.
Mm-hmm. I
Which
was I was I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were telling me that they were telling me about objective and subjective morality, and how as atheists we've got no basis for our morality, and we have to borrow from the Christian worldview for to have morality. And I was thinking, so it's interesting that you would say that God only exists in philosophy, because that's the only time they can come up with this mumbo jumbo and try to bamboozle you with all these arguments. In my opinion, it should be fairly straightforward. If your God does exist, you should be able to show the evidence without any philosophical arguments, and without having to jump through hoops and all these things. So
I
it
mean,
just
you talk
doesn't
about
work.
this argument from morality. You know, this concept that they have the monopoly on morals, and whether there is objective or subjective morality.
Oh yeah.
And again, this is one of those questions which is you can get really, really deeply into a philosophical conversation about morals. But if you step away from highbrow philosophy and just think about this for a second, why would I want to hurt anybody? What would be my motivation for getting up in the morning, even though I don't believe in God, for getting up in the morning and going killing and raping as many people as I possibly could? What is the point of even saying that it's I have no basis for morality? Apart from we understand that human beings and animals of a higher structure have empathy. They have a moralistic background. You know, we're moral because it serves a purpose. You know, it's almost evolutionary. It's much better to be good and talk to your neighbor in a kind way and help people out where you can. It's much better to live in a society where that happens because you feel safer. I'd hate to live in a society that I didn't feel safe walking outside of my door,
Mm-hmm.
whether you believe in God or not. You know, so we these sort of things are, you know, they're structured within us. We've built up societies over millennia, over so much time, over billions of years of evolution. We build societies that are advantageous to us, and the societies that flourish would have been the ones that they're not killing each other all the time, and you have some sort of law and code, and you do love people. You know, you have empathy for people. It's like, you know, if whenever I watch it, you know, when you see something like Gogglebox, you know, there's a program on TV called
Yes, I know.
Gogglebox,
Yeah.
right? And you'll see every so often there'll be a program about you know, a poor kid who's got cancer or something,
Mm, mm,
and they're all watching this program, and every single one of them, no matter who they are, what background they come from, they'll all be crying at the program. And why? Because we've all got empathy. We
mm.
all feel for that person. We all see someone who's hurt or injured or you know, down or depressed or whatever it is, and we feel for those people. You know, this is just basic human empathy, and we all have that. It's got nothing to do with God. It's got everything to do with evolution. It's got everything to do with who we are as human beings. And it's just what annoys me. I think I said to someone who's a theist, I said, so you know that every so often someone loses their faith. So
Yes.
does that mean the very first thing they'll do is go out and just do whatever they want? You know, they'll rape and kill and drink and all that sort of thing, or will they just carry on the way they've always carried on in their own society?
I mean, that what you're saying, that's what happened to me, right? I came away from religion and I felt like I'd lost my identity. I felt
Yeah,
like, okay, oh, who am I now? Who is this person now? Right? And but really and truly, nothing changed. In fact, I'm a better person for it because anything I do now, I do for my own will. I do because I get up in the morning and have a desire to do it. There's no uh uh God, or no, there's nothing trying to tell me what to do. It's my reality. It's my I decide what goes on in my reality, if you know what I mean.
yeah. You're a
So
good person because you're a good person. You know, I mean,
yeah.
you know, we've had conversations and you know, we've had some, you know, some private conversations. Me and you have had some private conversations about, you know, um, your journey out of it, and I know that you found that quite hard. You
Yes,
know,
I did.
and from my position was that I felt for you. You know, I've spoken to a lot of people who have gone through this, and it's not easy. You know, from going from one mindset to a different mindset is not easy for us because there's lots of questions, and you have questions. You want to
Oh
try
yes.
and sort it out in your head exactly where you're going and things like that. I've seen this happen with so many different people. And you know, when we started talking, you know, and we're, you know, when we started talking, we was having a laugh and things like that. But there was a point when I could tell that you was, you know, I just need to talk to someone. I put myself in a position of talking to you and having a chat with you because
Thank you.
like
Thanks
I
for doing
knew
that.
I knew that it was going to be hard, you know. And but I see this all the time, and And it's quite sad when it's not only sad, but it's obvious that what happens with people, if you're a believer and your whole life you've been a believer that there is a God, and if you pray to this God, then you have some sort of salvation in the afterlife, and you absolutely 100% believe that. When you get to a point where you just go, actually, I'm really struggling with this, and it isn't just like, oh, I'm going to be an atheist. No one ever does that. The only reason we're called atheists is because we're not convinced that God exists, and that's the definition of what an atheist is. We don't go out and look to be an atheist. I never looked to be an atheist. That's what I was. I wasn't convinced God exists or gods exist. So by definition, I am an atheist. And it wasn't until later on that I started working within some organizations that helped other atheists. And I only did it. I didn't get paid for any of this stuff. I became part of the international side and also the UK side purely to try and help atheists to get some sort of grasp on what's going on and help them to make that transition, because it's not easy sometimes. These are very deep seated worldviews that people have, that when they suddenly realize that isn't real, and they've been lied to by people that they love, not necessarily on purpose. A lot of people who, when their parents are very religious. I was talking to a guy just the other day whose parents are very religious. He can't tell them. He just cannot tell them that he doesn't believe in God anymore. He just can't tell them because it will hurt them. So this is again, this kid won't tell his parents because he thinks it may hurt them, right? So he's got much more morals than people would attribute to him, because he doesn't believe in God. So where does his morals come from? Well, he doesn't want to hurt his parents, so he's not telling them. So he's prepared to suffer so he doesn't hurt his parents' feelings, and you get this all the time. So the moral argument, it just falls by the wayside very, very quickly, just like every other single argument. I don't think there's any argument for God which is not either fallacious, just doesn't work, in logic. But there's something. I mean, the calm cosmological argument, which is like a big one. They sort of the universe began to exist and all that sort of thing. So obviously there was a creator. This is the thing that I think is really was the biggest thing that pulled me away from any sort of religion, was this concept of some sort of agency that created things. Why is that a better argument than nature? I couldn't understand why you had to put agency at the beginning of something. Is that because of incredulity? Maybe you just go, well, I can't think of a better way of the universe starting, so it had to be a god of some description. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any more sense than it's nature. We've got to try and find out what that is. Why the universe started? What was around before that? How did that work? That's far more interesting.
And there are some things that we wouldn't have any answers for. And it's okay to not have answers, instead of just plugging in a God in the mix, when it's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there is a problem with the concept of I don't know. People don't like to not know. They like to be sure, but we can't know what happened before the Big Bang, at the moment. We may do at some point. We can't know what happens when we die, because you can't get a message back, because God, things like ghosts. I don't believe in things like ghosts. I don't believe in a lot of stuff that is supernatural. I think this is the biggest problem for me, is this concept of the supernatural. Again, it's like with the argument for ghosts. There is no evidence for that. There's hearsay and rumor and things like that, but there's it's like UFOs. It's like a lot of these things that people choose to believe without evidence. All I want to do is I want to see some evidence. I just want to see some evidence. If there's evidence of something, then it becomes not supernatural. It becomes natural then. If you can measure it, it becomes natural. If you can see it, it becomes natural. So if there is such a thing as, like a ghost, for instance, then we should be able to measure it because it's impacting our world. Well, we've never been able to measure anything. And all the people who say they have been debunked.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
If we can measure it, it becomes natural. So I think I'm just a bit skeptical of the supernatural, and God is the biggest one out there. So consequently, I am an atheist because of by definition. I don't have a belief in God or gods. But then going on from that, it's like I found it very interesting on the philosophical side, and I enjoy having those conversations. So that's why I started working within the international organization, because it was very, very interesting. And then later very quickly found out that the actual job was helping people in dire need. That was the primary job. And I did that for sort of 18 months, but I just really could not continue it. It was just like, it was pretty awful. And I take my hat off to the people
who do it.
Yeah, there's some wonderful people in there that just got the biggest hearts in the world and help these people.
You're no longer with the Atheist Alliance.
No, I did come out of there. I did a lot of their podcasts and things like that. But it was just got to a point where I could not do it anymore. It just I may go back and do some more another time, but along with the stuff we was doing in the UK was taking up in quite a lot of time as well. But I wanted to get involved in it and to try and help as many atheists as possible, because there is problems, and there's problems in the UK. There are definite problems in the UK, because there are families that are incredibly religious, and when their children announce that they don't want any part of the religion, they can have some serious problems. Even in the UK, we have some pretty horrendous stuff going on, especially with young Muslim girls.
Killings. There have been honor killings here in the UK.
Yeah, there is that sort of. It's very rare. It is very
true. True.
And so it's not. Yes, it's got to be tackled, but there's some very basic people. Things like ostracization. When people are they're ostracized from their families, even in the UK, because of their non-belief. They have some pretty serious issues, and people get beaten and thrown out of home and all that sort of stuff. And it's just pretty horrendous what religious people can do to their own family. Just boggles my mind that people can do this, and all to protect protect God. This all-powerful being needs protection in some way. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
He can do his own job, can't he? He can do his own. He doesn't need anyone to, if he's that powerful.
Yeah.
Now, I remember what I was going to ask you. We talked about. I was trying to find this graph that shows religion and atheism, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they are. I couldn't find the graph, but it was obvious and evident on the graph that atheism is on the increase and religion is on the decline. And I think
it's taken over, and it's we put a link to the survey.
I wish I could find that survey. Oh goodness.
Yeah,
I couldn't find it.
It might be in.
If you can find it, I would. And while we're doing that, I've put the link to Atheism UK's YouTube channel in the chat, guys. I've pinned it up there, so please subscribe to them. I'm one of the members of the panel. I come on, and we have very interesting conversations. Well, near enough weekly, right?
Yeah,
Near
we,
enough
we, we, we
weekly
try and do it as
conversations.
yeah, we try and do it weekly. Sometimes falls by the wayside because we can't get enough people to talk on there. But yeah, I mean we're doing. I don't think we've only missed like two or three in a year when that sort of happens. But I can't find the actual link. But I will do, and we put it into the end of the
Okay.
into the thing. Yeah,
And right. So tell us, where do you see atheism going in the next 10 years? Do
well,
you think that we'll still continue to see that increase in numbers of people becoming atheists, or do you think that the UK will rather gravitate towards religion? uh, um, I've heard some people say, "Oh, Muslims are trying to take over the world." There are parts of London. I've heard that there are parts of London where some streets are they're all Muslims. They're all you walk on the street and the greeting there is Allahu Akbar, or those kind of things. They're trying to have
yeah,
carve
I honestly don't
niches
think
for
that
themselves.
I don't think it's too much of an issue, to be honest. I think what I'd like is for atheist organisations to not need to exist.
Mm.
And I think it's like everything else. It just takes time. There's as we know, there's a lot more people that are non-religious than religious nowadays. It's becoming a smaller and smaller and smaller community.
Mm.
A lot of churches now are either gone. They're not churches anymore, so they're being repurposed into housing and things like that. It will take a bit of time. I think that the idea for me is that we need to focus on just being a very, very good community and getting rid of these clubs, which is all they are. They're clubs, they're religious clubs.
All them.
And if we can get rid of those, because they all hate each other. I mean, they all despise each other.
Yeah.
And they'll always be fighting because God is important to them, and if you don't believe in their God, they will fight you. And we see this throughout the world. And so I think if we can get rid of that side of it, and we have to build a society for everyone. That's really the whole point of it. A secular society where it doesn't matter, even if you do believe in God, it doesn't really matter as long as you don't push it on anybody else. Don't push
I love that. I
all.
love that. Whether you believe in God, whether you don't believe in God, we want a society where everybody can live together.
Exactly.
As long as you're not shoving your religious beliefs down anybody's throat.
Yeah, and as I say, if your religion tells you can't eat ice cream on a Tuesday, that's fine. Just don't tell me not to eat ice cream on a Tuesday, because I'll tell you to sod off. Nothing to do with you. So.
And guys, if you have questions for Andy in the chat, please put your questions, tag me, and let me, we'll see the questions and we can ask Andy. And also, Andy, you gave me the link to your website. I am going to put
I've got my own
in.
website as well. It's one called Driven Beyond Belief. And I tend to write quite a bit. I'm writing a book at the moment, and it's
Nice.
about atheism.
What's it about?
Well, it's the title of it at the moment is "Do We Need God?" And it's a very serious question. Does humanity need the concept of God. And so I talk about a lot of different things in there. And it goes quite in depth in a lot of things, but I also write a lot on my website, the Driven Beyond Belief website. And I've got a Facebook page.
I'm going to put the Facebook group in the chat now. So can anybody sign up to that? Can anyone?
Yeah, I mean, just join the Facebook. I mean, it's not something which is like, I'm pushing hugely. It's just a hobby for me. It's just like I like to share my thoughts on certain things, and a lot of things come up that are interesting, let's say. So we talk about things like the corporation of God. This is where people just make money out of God.
Say that again. What did you call it?
Stuff in America, really, more than anything else.
What did you call it? The
corporation of God.
The corporation. Okay, yeah. Okay. The corporation of God. The Jesus industry.
About, the existence of God and the some of the arguments and how you counter those arguments through reason. Mm-hmm. But also talk about sort of I've got a chapter which is called the eventual rise of the Planet of the Apes, because we're from apes, and it's about humanity sort of at the end of the day losing its religion and just becoming a much better place. That's really what it's about.
So Noxon Volpenher says, here in Ulster, according to Atheist Republic, more than 1/4 of the people answered in a survey that they identify as non-religious. I think that's in my opinion, going forward, this is going to be the trend. This is going to be the trend.
And it's with the survey they were talking about was the British Attitude Survey.
Is that what it is? The British Attitude Survey. Let me see if I can find it, because that graph was.
Yeah, it's a PDF document that
British Attitude Survey.
And I mean, there's lots of different statistics coming out from different places, but all the trends are the same. The religion's going down, non-belief is going up, and that is more than interesting. I mean, it's the sort of thing that you'd expect with the more information that comes out. People are more interested in things like science. When someone like Brian Cox can get 10,000 people into Wembley for a science lecture, that says a lot, and that's a great thing to happen. To understand science rather than religion.
Okay, I think I found the graph. Just 1 second. I need to find it. No, not this one. Just 1 second. I will show this. Where is it now? Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. I'll find it. I think it's this one. Christian. Yeah, I think this is it. This is. I'll show it in a second now. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Okay, this looks like the.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the actual.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one we had on the other day.
So this is
the sort of reddish line is Christianity, and the sort of turquoisey sort of line is non-religion.
Just trying to make it bigger. 1 second. Let me. Not too much, but just enough.
It gives people an idea. But that's basically what's happened. This is the British Attitude Survey. Again, we'll put the link in below.
So yeah, now you can tell us about this graph you were saying.
Yeah, it's basically showing from I can't see it very clearly on this, but I think it's Let me just put this up to.
So the pink one, the
Yeah, so
pink
the pink one at
is
the top there is Christianity, and the blue or the
Christianity.
turquoise one is no religion. And this comes from I think that's
So
1983.
1983
Yeah,
to
to 2018.
2018.
So you can see that
2018.
that this is the trend.
It is.
People not following any specific religion is massively on the rise, and it's only going to carry on this way. And the whole attitude is we want to try and get to a secular country, and it is pretty secular at the moment. As I say, we're quite lucky in the UK as far as this is. We don't have a massive fight, but
Okay, someone is asking, what's the yellow, Dr. Cyrus? The
yellow is
yellow is
non-Christian.
non-Christian faiths. So all the others that are not Christian. So Islam will come under there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism.
Looks like that's on the rise, just slightly.
Yeah. Well, there will be. There's a lot more people from other countries coming to the UK.
Right.
Looking for work and better lives and things like that. So you'd expect that to happen. But what tends to happen is, I've got some really good friends who ex-Muslim, and they tell me that that's on the rise quite heavily now. Children that are born in the UK really don't want to follow the Muslim faith. Some do, some don't, but there's more and more coming out of the Muslim faith. Because I think it's not as relevant today. I mean, I don't think religion is relevant today. I think when I look back at my parents' time, I think even then, my dad was in the RAF, and he would have probably gone to church like everybody else. In them sort of times, it was sort of just a cultural thing. You go to church, believe in God, sing the hymns. I think a lot more people nowadays just question a lot of that. And it's all because of just, all the stuff that's happened. Science has really sort of gone out to the masses, and a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past who have come out of religion have categorically said it's a lot of the reasons why they've done that is because they can't reconcile what they've learned in science with religion. It just seems less and less likely. So there's quite a lot of that in there as well. As I say, I mean, it's one of the most interesting things. Cosmology is incredibly interesting, and I love that. And it was one of the first things that really made me start thinking. When I got that book when I was 12 about the solar system. I couldn't understand how that could. What's the concept of creation? What's that? I just didn't get it. Noah's flood. You read these things and you just go, it doesn't make any sense. And then when you start going into it and you realise that a lot of these stories are stories from way in the past, that they're regurgitated stories, that and we've also got a guy called Jason Sylvester who's he's an author, and he looks into the stories of the Bible, and he finds out where they're from, the reasons behind them and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff in the Bible is political, political of the time. It's really to do with the politics of the time rather than any religious connotation to it. But there's also things in the Bible which are poetry, and there's I mean, don't get me wrong, the Bible is a fantastic piece of literature, but that's all it is. It's just a piece of literature. It's part of
That's all it is.
Humanity is, it's like, it's like Homer's Iliad and things like that. These books of antiquity that
Shakespeare.
are just really interesting. They're incredibly interesting. That doesn't mean they're real. It's like Jason the Argonauts was a story. Doesn't mean it's real. So, and we've got to sort of get to the point where we actually understand that this is antique literature, and we've got to take it as it is. Great stories, but there's very, very little reality. I mean, most of the things that, the story of the patriarchs isn't true. Moses didn't exist. We know these things through paleontology and archaeology and all
Moses
those.
didn't exist. Ooh, ooh, that's big.
Well, we
Mhm.
know that we know that those things, those patriarchs didn't exist in the way they
Ooh.
are portrayed. It's political.
Would you say Jesus existed?
It's very difficult to say whether someone called Jesus existed. It probably was itinerant priests or rabbis. There's a lot of apocalyptic literature at the time, and again, I don't know whether it's a myth or some truth in that. You don't know. I mean, but I know that a lot of it's written for the church. So it's not going to be all true. So
I've got a question for you, and I'm just trying to get your thoughts. This radicalization of people, the extremism you find in the UK, when there was a time when ISIS, right? A lot of young people were just packing their bags and going off from the UK to join ISIS. There's been people who've been radicalized here in the UK, especially during the pandemic when people are at home, they're accessing materials on the internet that radicalizes them. I mean, recently there was a gentleman he was in the news recently. This man went from the UK to the US, in Texas to be precise, and he walked into a temple and held the rabbi and some other people hostage, right? And he was screaming, "Oh, he wanted the release of another extremist woman." Well, he was shot dead in the end, and thank goodness that the captives, nothing happened to them. But what do you think about this radicalization of and extremism?
Well, radicalization happens. It's happened throughout history. It's nothing new. Again, the radicalization of young people into whatever it is, whether it's well, you mentioned ISIS and things like that. It's all political. It's got nothing really to do with religion. Religion is just used as some sort of leverage. It's an indoctrination that is used, but it's all political. It's it's easy, I think, to blame religion for radicalization, but religion is just a belief in God. It has nothing to do with hurting anybody. It's just a belief in God. I don't believe that, but I know plenty of people who believe in God who are lovely people.
Yes.
Beautiful people. There's some of my best friends are people who believe in God. I've got no problem with people believing in God. Radicalization is nothing to do with belief or disbelief in God. It's just ideology. And that's been going on for thousands of years, brainwashing people into fighting and dying for a cause. It could be capitalism, communism, could be, Nazis, religion is just another thing that's sort of caught up. I mean, it is pretty sick to use God as a way of, kill in the name of God. That just makes no sense. And this is again another reason why I think sort of religion needs to just stop. Don't give them the excuse. Don't give them the excuse anymore. But it will always happen. But it's always going to be political. It's always about money and guns and power and everything else. It's got nothing to do with religion. It's like the preachers in America that rip the poor off. And they're making millions, and they've got like jet planes and things like that they travel around in, and mansions they live in. These preachers, they've got nothing. It's nothing to do with God. It's just that they're using God as a tool to rip people off. It's just another thing. If they didn't have God, they'd find some other way of doing it. Of lying and cheating their way through. They don't believe in God. You can guarantee they don't believe in God.
Oh well, so guys, if anybody has questions, now is the time to ask. But if not, I'll just wait a couple of minutes, see if they have any questions for you. And do you have anything that we can look forward to? Anything that you would like to let people know about yourself or what you've got coming on?
We've got a committee that's been put together to look at the new causes that we're going to be helping, and some of the campaigns that we're going to be putting in place. So we're just working exactly what we want to do and how we're going to do that, and we do need support. So if anybody's out there, you'll be able to tell people about what we're doing, because you'll be on the podcast anyway with us telling people. So
I will be there.
Oh yeah,
I will be there. So far so good. There are no questions. Most of the people listening, they're atheists. They've got it all going. I think, and if there's anyone struggling right now, struggling with their faith, struggling to they're asking those questions, what would your advice be to them?
Just talk to people. I think that the biggest problem is that there is a fear of leaving a religion, and it's quite huge sometimes. There's which stops people doing it. But I think if you can go and just have a chat with the local. There's lots of different types of sort of local atheist groups or local humanist groups and things like that. Just start talking to people. Getting out and start talking to people. If you can, if you've got queries, you can come onto the. You've got the YouTube channel. The link here to the YouTube channel. If you've got the, you want to put a query or question in there, we answer as many as we possibly can. Again, it is just getting in touch. How I got in touch with Atheism UK in the first place was that I wrote a comment on a post, and the question I asked is, how do I get in touch with you? And it was a guy called Chris Street, who was the president of AUK at the time, messaged me back, on private message over Facebook, and said, "Oh, there's my email address. Email me, and we'll get in touch." I had a conversation with him on Messenger, where we actually sort of got the cameras up, and I had a chat with them, and I just wanted to find out a bit more about them. And we're happy to talk to anybody. If anybody's sort of thinking that it's thinking of leaving religion or having a problem once left, then have a chat with us. It'd be myself. It could be even Esther. If you want to get in touch with Esther, have a chat with Esther about what you're going through, and but just watch the podcast, watch the come on the site, ask questions, have a chat with us. We can only do what we can to help.
Absolutely.
We do have an understanding of what it's sort of like, because we've spoken to so many people who have left religion and struggled a little bit, and it is just a case of having a chat. So Get yourself out there.
So when I identified, when I came out and said I am an atheist, I was asked two questions, and I'm going to ask them to you, and we will round up on that note. I was asked, where am I getting my morals from?
Mm-hmm.
And how am I a good person without God? So I'd like to ask you those two
Well, I think
questions.
the moral things we've talked about, they're innate within us. I mean, there are some people who are completely horrible, and that it wouldn't be any different between whether they're a theist or a non-theist. People can be horrible, and people can be really nice, and it's got nothing to do with whether they believe in God or not. It's just them and their culture and the way they're brought up and the family that they're brought up with and things like that. So morals are just irrelevant to me. People have got empathy or they don't. So it doesn't really matter if you believe in God or not. And what was the other one?
Where are you getting your morals from, and how are you good without God?
Yeah, again, you're good without God because you're either a nice person or you're not. I mean, I've met some fantastic people who are theists. People who believe in God, Catholics or Muslims or whatever, that are lovely people. They haven't got a bad bone in their body. I've also met some theists that are really properly bad and evil people. But I've met atheists that are bad people. They're just intrinsically bad. Being an atheist doesn't make you a good person. Being a theist doesn't make you a bad person. It's all blown out of all proportion. People are either good or bad. It's how they're brought up, the culture they were brought up in, and things like that. There's one thing that I think it was Stephen Weinberg who said that good people will do good things. Bad people will do bad things, but for a good person to do bad things, that takes religion.
Say that again, please.
People will be good, and people will be evil, but for a good person to do evil, that takes religion.
I'm sure I've heard what's his name now, Christopher Hitchens. He's the one that said religion can make good people do bad things. I think it was him that said that.
Yeah, Stephen Weinberg originally said it, but I mean, it's a sort of thing that Hitchens would pick up on straight away. So anyway, it's been fantastic talking to you, Esther.
I've enjoyed the conversation, and everybody, please do subscribe to his channel. Well, it's not just his channel; it is Atheism UK, and also. Yeah, I've also put the link to your website and your Facebook group into the chat. And so, guys, thank you, Andy, for coming. Appreciate you on here. And keep up the good work, spreading the message of atheism and, doing what you do. Yes, keep up the good work. So, everyone, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming to listen to us speak about atheism. And I will be back tomorrow with another live stream. Right. Thank you all, and see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Bye. 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 Bye.